Record.
Pardon me, my video has been stopped and it was not on my end, just FYI.
Sorry about that, Rebecca. I'll fix that now.
Sure, no worries. Thanks, Carrie.
Dr. Mighton, if you can let us know when you're ready to go, then I'll proceed.
I'm good anytime you're ready.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Deputy Mayor Tom Hutchinson and Chair of the Adjustment Meeting. Item number 1, we're going to call the meeting to order. This is the August the 9th, 2021 Committee of Adjustment meeting. We do have quorum as indicated by the committee members' login. For this meeting, we're using both audio and video. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the Westgray website at www.westgray.com. The technology for this meeting is being managed by the Westgray staff. Please refrain from clicking buttons throughout the meeting unless prompted. And before we continue, I'm asking Director Mighton to provide an overview of some of the other key points for this meeting. Director Mighton?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. I will begin by, if you get disconnected at any time, you can dial 1-647-558-0588 and enter meeting ID 891-9652-3908. Members of council of the committee have been briefed on the features of the Zoom platform and will be raising their hand to speak. If you've joined over the phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand and we will unmute you at the chair's request. If you have any questions or any technical difficulty, you can also send me a message on the chat function to Carrie Mighton and we can read the question on your behalf. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Mighton. Mayor Robbins, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And at this time, I wanted to alert you to the fact that I may excuse myself from the meeting for a short period of time as a call might be coming in that I must take. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Townsend, you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we've been in a couple of meetings this morning, and the first one, I had some freezing my connection, and I actually went down during the economic development one. So if I do disappear, it's because of technical reasons, not because I want to. Okay, just wanted to let you know, give you a heads up.
Thank you. Does it help if you turn your camera off at all, or is your signal more stable?
No, it just disappears totally. So what I will do is, like, without notice, so what I'll do is I'll just come back in as fast as I can. But just to warn you that could happen.
Okay, thank you. Well, we'll still have quorum, I guess, if that happens, and the mayor is asked to step out as well. I think we'll still have quorum, so we'll be okay. Okay, so that takes us to item number 2, disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. And members of the committee, if there's any, is there any interest to declare at this time? And if not, if one should arise during the meeting, you can declare it at that time. We'll move on to item number 3, the purpose of the meeting. And I'll ask Clerk Sharbeck to please provide some comments.
Through you, Chair Hutchinson, the purpose of this meeting is to allow the presentation of applications for minor variances and for consents to sever, and to allow interested members of the public the opportunity to ask questions or offer comments with regard to the applications. There is a public registry located online with Director of Finance Mighton, and if any member of the public would like to be notified in writing of the decision on the application or applications, they are to provide their name and mailing address to kmighton@westgray.com via email or by telephone at 519-369-2200 for the registry. This will also entitle one to be advised of a local planning appeal tribunal hearing in the event the decision on the application is appealed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Clerk Sarbeck. All right, that takes us to item number 4, approval of minutes. And we'll be approving the minutes from the July the 5th, 2021 meeting. And if I could get the recommendation read by the clerk, and then I'll be looking for a mover and a seconder, please.
Through you, Chair, the recommendation is that the Committee of Adjustment approves the minutes of July 5th, 2021 as circulated.
Member Herger, are you moving these minutes?
I will move the approval of the minutes. I do have a copy.
Okay, and I'll be looking for a seconder, please. Mayor, I apologize. Member Robinson, you are seconding these
Yes.
minutes? Thank you, and go ahead, Member Herger.
On the minutes, on page 8, number 9.4.1, it talks about the committee members' comments, verbal comments, and it says Member Hutchison. I was hopeful that in the future we could just have clarity about Member Doug Hutchison or Chair or Vice Chair, and with a specific name, just as we record the minutes going forward.
Okay, I'm sure the clerk can take care of that.
Thank you.
Clerk Sarbeck, do you have any comments for that?
No, we can help make that a little bit clearer. Thanks.
Thanks, Beth.
Okay, thank you. All right, is there any comments or questions from the committee members on the minutes, other than what Member Herger has brought forward? Okay, we do have it moved and we have it seconded. We'll call the question. All those in favor, just raise your hand. I show all committee members in favor, none opposed, so that motion is carried. That takes us now to item number 5. And this is minor variance application number A17 2021, Stott Keith 475066, Townsend Lake Road, concession 13, part lot 4, RP 17R 2549 and RP 17R 2549 part 1, Township of Glen Eld. 5.1, application number A17 2021, Stott Keith. Okay. 5.2, Planner Spencer's report. Planner Spencer, please read the recommendation as well as 5.3 written comments, including 5.3.1 and 5.3.2. Planner Spencer.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, the recommendation is that Committee of Adjustment receives the report from Planner Spencer A17 2021 Stott Keith, wherein the planner recommends conditional approval of application A17 2021 as the application is considered to maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan, the general intent and purpose of the municipality's zoning bylaw, is considered minor in nature and a desirable use of the land and buildings. The purpose and effect of this application is to vary the provisions of section 6.15A to permit the construction of an accessory building on the subject lands prior to the establishment of the main use, the effect of which will permit the construction of an accessory structure on the subject lands. The 4 tests of a minor variance were reviewed as part of this application and part of the pre-consultation regarding this application. Planning staff do consider this request to be minor in nature, as it will be retained on the property in future and will continue to be required to conform to the balance of the provisions of the zoning bylaw. Planning staff are further satisfied that the request is desirable in nature and appropriate use of the land and buildings, as it will facilitate the construction of the principal use while avoiding the use of outside storage, and will remain on the subject lands following the future completion of the principal residence and use. The establishment of an accessory building is not anticipated to preclude the permitted uses within the official plan from occurring in future or in the present during construction. Planning staff have no further concerns with respect to the County of Grey official plan. Planning staff are further satisfied that the location and size of the accessory structure maintains the general intent and purposes of provision 6.15A and 6.32 within the municipality's zoning bylaw. Consultation was undertaken with the County of Grey Planning and Development Department in addition to the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. Comments were received with no concerns related to the application. Planning staff have no further comments at this point in time and have not received additional comments from the public at this time with respect to this application. Any further questions or clarity are happily answered at any time. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Spencer. That'll take us to 5.4, verbal comments. And for members of the public that are joining us today, there's two parts to this one. First one, we'll reach out to the committee members for discussion, and then that will be followed up by the public comments. So under 5.4.1, committee members. Committee members, this is your opportunity to ask any questions, provide any comments you may have before we turn the application to the public. If there's any questions, and I'm just looking at my screen, and I will start with Member Hutchinson, followed by Member Hergert, and then Member Townsend. Member Hutchinson, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so first question is there any time frame associated with the building? Like, I mean, they have a garage, but do they have to build within a certain time frame, given that, you know, this garage could be there for years and years and years and never have to build a house? So I'm curious about that.
Planner Spencer.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. With the provision of the building permit, there will be the addition of the conditional condition that they need to provide a building permit application for the principal use within 12 months.
12 months. Okay, thank you. And just the technical thing on their permit, on their item 5, they've checked off that they're on a county road, but I don't believe that's correct. I believe it's a municipal road.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. That is correct. That is an error on the application.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any follow-up or further questions or comments there, Member Hutchinson?
No, I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Member Hergert, go ahead, please.
Yes, this is a note to staff. There was part of your report, actually was the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority comments to update the mapping to reflect the Grey County mapping. Just asking staff if that will be updated.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. A common comment, as the hazard mapping is often revised as part of the zoning bylaw review, that mapping will coincide with the mapping that the County of Grey official plan has. And County of Grey staff are the ones that actually conduct mapping exercise for us, and that's being conducted as part of the zoning bylaw review. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have another question about the location of the house that's anticipated. We will be able to hit all the setback requirements for the proposed shop and then the secondary build of the house. Is that correct?
Planner Spencer.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. That is correct. They will be required to meet the provisions of the zoning bylaw, and failure to do so would require them to reappear before committee, and potentially, if it's more serious indication that they can't meet those setbacks, it would have to go through a zoning bylaw amendment through council. But a permit cannot be issued until either one of those two things happen, or that they conform entirely with the bylaw in its current form.
Thank you very much, Planner Spencer. That concludes my questions. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Member Hergert. Your hand's still up, just so you know. And I will go to Member Townsend. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a similar vein of the previous questions. The first one was that I wasn't sure whether the condition the Planner Spencer had commented on was for the building permit to be submitted, or sorry, the application for the permit to be submitted, or to actually be approved. And I know the county had suggested submitted, and I'm assuming that's more for location and the fact that they are going to move forward. Is that correct?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So yes, that's correct. They do have like the minor variance associated with this structure does stay with the property in perpetuity. It doesn't have an expiration date associated with the minor variance. The individuals owning the property have the ability to apply for that permit at their leisure. They can wait to apply for that permit, but once that permit becomes issued, there will be the condition that a residential structure permit would follow within 12 months. A permit is valid for 6 months, so they would have some time to construct the structure and apply at their leisure within that time to still meet the timeframes associated with the permit.
Thank you for that clarification. Sorry, Mr. Chair. Second question had to do with the recommendation from the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. I believe they were suggesting a site control agreement. Do you believe that that's required, or the steps that you just outlined are adequate enough to ensure that everything is fine?
Planner Spencer?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, it is my professional opinion that it's not necessary to invoke site plan control in this circumstance with the conditional approval that we're willing to provide at this time as part of this application.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Those were my only questions.
Okay, thank you, Member Townsend. And I see Member Robinson. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Planner Spencer. On the report on page 2, I'm just seeking clarity. Item 3, which asks one of the test questions for a minor variance. Does the request maintain the general intent and purpose of the County of Grey official plan? And I'm just looking at the language for the explanation, where it talks about the intent of agricultural designation, the rural designation. Certain farming activities are also supported. And then the final paragraph, the establishment of an accessory building is not anticipated to preclude these uses, ... continued on. I wonder if you could just elaborate on item number 3, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So the clarification with respect to the agricultural uses on the property, they are subject to a certain number of tests, particularly when we get to the implementation part of the zoning bylaw. The establishment of this accessory structure will not preclude the uses nor the zoning bylaw intent in the same regard. So both items 3 and 4 of the report. With respect to the rural designation, very similar uses, somewhat more flexibility. The establishment of this structure is also not anticipated to have any impact on those uses. And finally, with the hazard designation on the subject lands through the official plan, no new buildings or structures are permitted within that area regardless. So this is not anticipated to impact the general intent and purpose of that land use designation. I'm happy to clarify further if you require. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Planner Spencer.
Okay, well, thank you. Any further comments or questions from the committee members before we turn this to the public? And then once we're done with that, we'll be going for a recommendation. Seeing none, we will move on to 5.4.2. This is members of the public's opportunity to speak. There's 2 parts of this portion of the meeting. Excuse me. First one is to speak in favor of the application. And once we've completed that, then we'll be looking for anybody who would like to speak in opposition or is against the application. So at this time, I'm going to ask Director Mighton to advise how members of the public can participate and let us know if we have anybody that wants to speak in favor or is opposed. Director Mighton.
Thank you, Chair. For members of the public wishing to ask a question, you can do so in one of 2 ways. If you have joined us over the phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand, and we can unmute you at the chair's request. Alternatively, you can press *9 to lower your hand. If you have joined us using the online meeting software and wish to ask a question or provide a comment, please send a chat message to myself, Carrie Mighton, and we can unmute you at the chair's request, or we can read the question on your behalf. At this point, I have not received any information in the chat function, and I do not see any raised hands.
Thank you, Director Mighton, and that would be for both for speaking in favor and opposition, if we're going to summarize that. I do not have anything on my screen as well. Okay, thank you. So we will move along to 5.5, and that's the decision by the committee. What direction would the committee like to take with this application? I'll be looking for a mover and a seconder, and I see Member Hergert followed by Member Hutchison. Member Hergert, go ahead, please.
Yes, I would move that we hereby approve minor variance A17.2021 STOTT STOT on Townsend Lake Road, subject to the conditions in the planning report.
Thank you. And Member Hutchinson, were you seconding this motion?
Yes, Member Hutchison, I second that.
Clerk Scharbeck, could you please read the recommendation before us?
Through you, Chair, moved by Councillor Member Hergert and seconded by Member Doug Hutchinson, that the Committee of Adjustment does hereby approve minor variance A17-2021 Stott for the reasons and with the conditions set out in the planner's report.
Thank you. Comments or questions from the committee members on the recommendation? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor, if you could just raise your hand, please. I see all committee members are in favor, none opposed. The motion has carried. And we'll go to item 5.6, and that would be next steps. Clerk Sharbeck, what would be the next steps?
Through you, Chair, on approval of the application, there is a 20-day appeal period, after which time staff will advise the applicant that they can proceed to obtain a building permit.
Thank you. Okay, so we are moving along to item number 6 on the agenda. This is minor variance application A18 2021 Dom Ryan and Agent Dom Construction, 1019 Victoria Street, Plan 153, Part Lot 1, South Victoria Street, RP 16R11092, Part 2, Township of Normandy. We have 6.1, application number A18 2021 Dom Ryan and Agent Dom Construction. Move to 6.2, Planner Spencer's report. Planner Spencer, please read the recommendation as well as 6.3 with the written comments, including 6.31 and 6.32. Planner Spencer, please.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair. The recommendation is that committee receives report A18 2020 Dom Ryan, agent being Dom Construction, and the recommendation that application A18 2020 be approved. The purpose and effect of the application is to vary the provisions of section 6142 of the municipality's comprehensive zoning bylaw, number 337, 2006, to permit a total floor area of an accessory structure to be approximately 167 square meters in size, whereas a total floor area of 92.9 square meters is permitted under the zoning bylaw, the effect of which will permit the construction of an accessory structure for storage purposes. The 4 tests of a minor variance were reviewed as part of this application and pre-consultation. Planning staff consider the request for the increased total floor area to be minor in nature, as it does not contravene the intent of the provisions of the zoning bylaw and will remain a secondary use on the property to the principal dwelling unit that currently exists and will also be located within the rear yard. Planning staff are satisfied that the request is desirable and appropriate for the use of the subject lands based on the zoning of the property for future development, which permits accessory structures and residential dwelling units. Planning staff are further satisfied that this designation of the secondary settlement area that is applicable to the subject lands, which permits residential uses and accessory structures, will not be impacted by this application. And furthermore, planning staff are satisfied that the location and size of the structure maintain the general intent and purpose of the municipality's zoning bylaw, and varying the provisions for increased total floor area does not contravene the general intent and purpose of the municipality's zoning bylaw. Consultation was conducted with the County of Grey Planning and Development Department, in addition to the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. No comments from the public of concern or support of the application were received to the Planning Department office, and there are no concerns with respect to the County of Grey and the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. Any clarification required is happily provided. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Spencer. We'll move to 6.4, verbal comments on our agenda. Item 6.4.1, speak for committee comments. And again, committee members, this is your opportunity to ask any questions or any comments you may have regarding this application. And I do see Member Hutchinson to be followed by Member Hergert. So Member Hutchinson, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm just curious, on the aerial photograph of this property, it doesn't show any buildings, but it's my understanding there's a house already on this building. This is just to add a garage. Is that correct?
Planner Spencer?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. The aerial photography predates the construction of the dwelling unit on the subject lands, in addition to the pool on the property. So the aerial photography is not current. Those are recently constructed recently constructed structures on the subject lands. Therefore, the aerial mapping predates that construction occurring.
Right. So would the county not have a GIS map that would show the housing?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the aerial photography and GIS mapping is current to the point of 2016 on the County of Grey official plan. They have not updated the mapping at this point in time.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
Any further, Member Hutchinson? Okay, thank you. Member Herder, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you. I do have a question about signatures giving permission for documentation to be included in public agendas. That paperwork is not actually signed. That's minor. It doesn't exactly relate to this minor variance, but just as complete accurate. I also have a note just for our committee that when we talk about the size of these secondary structures, we continue to receive several requests for minor variances that exceed our zoning for the size. And I bring that into question as we talk about all of our comprehensive zoning bylaw. But if it were for personal storage use, that is likely what we're talking about in some aspects. Other aspects, the zoning here allows for home and rural occupations being permitted. Is there any requirement if this turns into a business that the applicant would contact West Grey for site-specific zoning?
Planner Spencer?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. The permitted uses within the accessory structure, as indicated by the applicant and their agent, are intended for the storage of recreational vehicles, so to speak, and to limit outside storage on the property. Zoning at this point in time does not permit businesses of that nature on the property, so they would be required to contact the municipality to evaluate that on a site-specific basis. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes my questions.
Okay, thank you. And just an FYI, Member Hutchinson, your hand is still up, as well as yours, Member Herder, unless you have another comment. Thank you. And I see Member Townsend's hand up. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Again, to Planner Spencer. On page 4 of the application, it actually has the accessory is 934.66 square meters in size, and that kind of tells me that's not going to happen. And when I look at the map, it confirms that it's smaller than the home. So I have a feeling it's 90 some odd or whatever. And I just wondered if for file purposes that should be corrected to whatever it really is, if in fact it's wrong, which I believe it is.
Planner Spencer?
You are correct that that's an error. The property is actually 167 square meters in size approximately, and that's been confirmed.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. That was my only comment.
Thank you. Any other comments from the committee at this time before I turn it to the public? Okay, I do not see any. That'll take us to 6.4.2. This will be public comments. Excuse me, there's two parts to this portion again. The first one is to speak in favor of it, be followed by anybody that would like to speak opposed or is against the application. I'm going to ask Director Mighton once again to let us know, or the public know, how they can participate in this. And if you could let us know if there's anybody that is in the queue, or if you received any correspondence for those who would like to speak in favor or opposed. Thank you. Director Mighton.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. For members of the public wishing to ask a question or express a comment, you can do so in one of two ways. If you have joined us over the phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand, and we can unmute you at the chair's request. You can also press *9 to lower your hand. If you have joined us using the online meeting software and wish to ask a question or express a comment, you can send a chat message to myself and we can unmute you at the chair's request, or we can send your request and send your comment and I can read it on your behalf. Just checking the chat box, and I do not have any comments at this point. And I see no raised hands from the public.
Thank you, Director Mike, and I've just looked at my screen, I see none as well. So we will move along to 6.5, and that will be the decision by the committee. What direction would the committee like to take with this application? Member Robinson, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, my motion is that the Committee of Adjustment approves minor variance application number A18-2021, Dom Ryan and Agent Dom Construction, for the reasons set out in the planner's report and also to receive the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Robinson. So we do have a moved, and I see Member Townsend. Will you be looking to second this motion?
It's Member Townsend, and yes, I do second that motion.
Thank you very much. Clerk Scharbeck, could you please read the recommendation?
Through you, Chair, moved by Member Robinson and seconded by Member Townsend, that Committee of Adjustment hereby approves minor variance application A18-2021, Dom Construction, for the reasons as set out in the planner's report.
Thank you, Clerk Scharbeck. Comments or questions from the committee members on the recommendation? Seeing none, I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor, if you could raise your hand. I see all members of the committee are in favor, none opposed. This motion is carried. And I'll go back to Clerk Scharbeck for the next steps, please.
Through you, Chair, the next step is again, upon this approval, there is a 20-day appeal period, after which time staff will notify the applicant that they're able to proceed with applying for a building permit.
Thank you. Okay, so we will move on to item number 7 on our agenda. This is minor variance application number A19-2021, 1896830 Ontario Inc., care of Dennis Graham and agent 579575 Ontario Inc., Can Do Homes, 46 Forest Creek Trail, Township of Bentic, Plan 1097, Lot 46, Municipality of West Grey. 7.1, application A19-2021, 1896830 Ontario Inc., care of Dennis Graham and agent 579575 Ontario Inc., Can Do Homes. 7.2 is Planner Spencer's report. If I could get Planner Spencer to please read the recommendation, and if you include the written comments, which will be including 7.3.1 and 7.3.2. Planner Spencer, please.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. Recommendation is that Committee of Adjustment receive the report from Planner Spencer regarding A19-2021, 1896830 Ontario Incorporated, wherein the planner recommends approval of application A19-2021, as the application is considered to maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan, the general intent and purpose of the municipality zoning bylaw, is minor in nature and a desirable use of the land and buildings. The subject lands are located within the Forest Creek Estate subdivision, and the property is currently vacant. The landowner has expressed interest in retaining as much of the trees on the subject lands as possible, wherein lies this application. As previously stated, the property is designed or designated as entirely rural within the county official plan. Residential dwelling units and accessory structures are considered a permitted use within this designation. And further, within that designation, there is the consideration to maintain natural heritage features such as woodlands. In this case, the proposed accessory structure is located within the designation, and the proposed use does maintain the general intent and purpose of the rural designation in that regard. Planning staff have no further concerns. Staff are also satisfied that the minor variance does not maintain the intent and does maintain, the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw while still maintaining the preservation of appropriate ingress and egress to the property itself and the preservation of natural vegetation. It is not intended to dominate the streetscape and will maintain the intent of the zoning bylaw in that regard. The ability to determine if a variance is minor in nature is relative to the impact the variance would have on adjacent lands. Development of this site would not impact the adjacent lands by impeding sight lines of adjacent properties and further protects the natural features. Planning staff have no further concerns in this regard. The property is presently zoned ER, which permits the construction of accessory structures. Relative to the preservation of the trees on the site, staff are satisfied that the lands and placement of accessory structure in the front yard is considered appropriate. Consultation was conducted with the County of Grey Planning and Development Department and the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. No concerns were highlighted from any members of the public in support or in against the application. County of Grey planning staff did suggest that the application may be considered to be altered to align with the provision of accessory structures maintaining rear and side yards. It's my professional opinion that in this regard, the retention of as much tree as possible on the lands is more important than altering the site plan, which warrants this application. Concerns were not identified by the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, although the property is within proximity of 120 meters to a provincially significant wetland, but development is not proposed within 30 meters of that wetland. No concerns were established from Conservation Authority in this regard. Any clarification that is requested at this point is happily provided. Thank you.
Thank you for your detailed report, Planner Spencer. And that'll put us at 7.4 on the agenda, verbal comments. 7.4.1, committee members. Once again, committee members, the opportunity to ask any questions or insert any comments you may have on this application. I'll be taking questions now or comments. Member Hutchinson, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I do notice that under the county response that they mentioned that that because of the lot size being 1 acre, they query whether the submitted site plan could be adjusted to facilitate alignment with West Grey's applicable zoning regulations. And when they look at their site plan, the garage is 5 feet from the property line. I'm just curious what our planners' comments are on that. I know you talked about cutting of trees. That being 5 foot to the property line, is that going to be a factor in terms of the neighbor property?
Planner Spencer.
It's my professional opinion that that won't be a factor with respect to the properties. Accessory structures are permitted to be as close in some cases as 3 feet from the property line, and that's a provided right within the zoning bylaw. Planning staff don't have concerns that this is going to create issues relative to neighboring lot lines because of the retention of trees and the provision of privacy with the retention of trees as part of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments? Any other comments or questions from the committee members? Oh, and I see Member Robinson may have stepped out to take her call. All right, we will move on to 7.4.2, and that is members of the public. And again, there's two parts to this one. The first part is going to be to speak in favor of it. Once we've gone through that, we'll be returning back to speak to anybody that's opposed or against the application. Again, I'll go to Director Mike and explain to the public how they can participate and to let us know if we have received any correspondence. Director Mike, please.
Thank you, Chair. For any members of the public just joining us, if you have joined over the phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand and we will unmute you at the chair's request. You can also press *9 again to lower your hand. If you have joined us using the online meeting software and wish to ask a question or express a comment, you can send a chat message to myself, Carrie Mighton, and we can unmute you at the chair's request, or I can read the question on your behalf if you prefer. Just checking the chat. I do not have anything in the chat function at this point. Or I do not see any raised hands from the members of the public.
Yeah, my screen's clear as well, Director Mighton. So we will move on to 7.5 on the agenda, and that's the decision by the committee. I'll be looking for a mover and a seconder to recommendation, and I do see Member Robinson hand first, followed by Member Herger. Member Robinson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm moving the motion that the Committee of Adjustment approves minor variance application number A19-2021 with 189680 Ontario Inc. For the reasons set out in the planner's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Robinson. Member Herger, would you second that recommendation?
Member Hergert, yes, I second that.
Thank you very much. Comments or questions from the committee members? Or I apologize, I will get Clerk Scharbeck to read the recommendation, and then I'll be looking for comments or questions. Clerk Scharbeck, please.
Through you, Chair. The recommendation moved by Member Robinson and seconded by Member Herger is that Committee of Adjustment hereby approves minor variance application A19-2021 for 1896830 Ontario Inc. for the reasons as set out in the planner's report.
Thank you. Now I'll be looking for comments or questions. Do we have the recommendation for us? Okay. Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor, if you could just raise your hand, please. And I do see all members of the committee are in favor. None opposed. This motion is carried. And that'll take us to item 7.6. Clerk Scharbeck, could you please provide the next steps, please?
Through you, Chair. Next steps for the applicants is once again with a minor variance, there is that 20-day appeal period. After that time, the decision of the committee is final and the applicant can proceed with their building permit application.
Thank you for the clarity. All right, item number 8 on our agenda is minor variance application A20-2021, Richard Graham, 213-461 Baseline Road, Township of Bentic. 8.1, application number A2021, Richard Graham. Go to 8.2, Planner Spencer's report. Planner Spencer, if you could please read the recommendation, followed by the written comments including under 8.3, including 8.3.1 and 8.3.2. Planner Spencer.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. The recommendation is that Committee of Adjustment receive the report from Planner Spencer, A20-2021, Graham, Richard, wherein the planner recommends approval of application A20-2021 as the application is considered to maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan, the general intent and purpose of the municipality's zoning bylaw, is minor in nature and a desirable use of the land and buildings. The subject lands are located at 213-461 Baseline Road within the geographic township of Bentic. The purpose of this application is to vary the provisions of section 612A, 612B, 6142, and 8.3.4 to permit the construction of an accessory structure and single detached dwelling unit, the effect of which will permit the placement of an accessory building in the front yard, an increased total floor area of the accessory structure of approximately 204 square meters, whereas a total floor area of 92.9 square meters is permitted, and a reduced rear yard setback for the detached dwelling unit of 3 meters, whereas 7.5 meters is required, the effect of which will permit the construction of an accessory structure and dwelling unit. Section 45 of the Act gives Committee of Adjustment the authority to grant relief from the provisions of the zoning bylaw, provided such relief passes those 4 tests. Planning staff have no concerns relative to the proposed development as an existing lot of record and it's undersized in nature, warranting the need for this application in order for it to proceed under the current zoning. The proposal generally conforms to the policies of the official plan as it is not intended to alter the use beyond those residential and accessory structures that are permitted. The minor variance does maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw as previously described, as it does maintain the intent, but is an undersized existing lot of record. Planning staff also consider the application to be minor in nature as a result of the fact of the zoning on the property and the ability to move and alter buildings with no disturbance to adjacent lands. Based on review of the appropriate and desirable use of the land and buildings, planning staff have no further concerns. Pre-consultation and formal consultation was conducted with the County of Grey, in addition to the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. No comments from the public were received in support or in opposition to this application. Comments from the county and from the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority had no concerns expressed regarding the application. As always, any questions of clarification are welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Spencer. That takes us to 8.4, verbal comments. Again, there's two parts to this. We're going to go to the committee, followed by the public. So 8.4.1 is committee comments. It's your opportunity to ask any questions, provide any comments before we turn the application to the public. Will there be any comments or questions on this application? Seeing none from the committee members, and we will roll to item 8.4.2, public comments on our agenda. Again, there's two parts to this. First one's to speak in favor of the application, which will be followed by anybody who'd like to speak opposed or against the application. Once again, we'll go to Director Mike to explain to the public how they can participate, and also to let us know if you've received any correspondence in favor or opposed. Director Mike, please.
Thank you, Chair. For any members of the public just joining us, you can participate in one of two ways. If you have joined us over the phone, you may press *9 to raise your hand, and we can unmute you at the chair's request. You can also press *9 again to lower your hand. If you have joined us using the online meeting software and wish to ask a question or express a comment, you can send a chat message to myself, Carrie Mighton, and we can unmute you at the chair's request, or alternatively, I can read the question on your behalf. We'll just check the chat function. I do not have any messages in the chat platform, and I do not have any raised hands at this point.
And my screen is clear as well. Thank you, Director Mighton. That'll take us to 8.5, decision by the committee. What direction would the committee like to take with this application? And I see Member Townsend's hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, Member Townsend, I'd like to move that the Committee of Adjustment receives the report from Planner Spencer on A20.2021, Graham Richard, and approves the application per the planner's report.
Thank you, Member Townsend. I do have this moved now. I'm looking for a seconder, please. And Member Hutchinson, go ahead, please.
Member Hutchison, I second the motion.
Thank you. Clerk Sherbeck, could you please read the recommendation?
Through you, Chair, the recommendation moved by Member Townsend and seconded by Member Hutchinson is that Committee of Adjustment receives the report from Planner Spencer and hereby approves application, minor variance application A20-2021 Graham for the reasons as set out in the planner's report.
Thank you. Comments or questions on the recommendation from the committee members? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor, if you could raise your hand, please. I see all members of the committee are in favor, none opposed. This motion is carried. It'll take us to item 8.6 on the agenda, and I will be Clerk Sherbeck, if you could let us know the next steps, please. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. The next steps again is to let that 20-day appeal period pass, after which time, if there's no appeals received, the applicant can move ahead and apply for their building permit.
Thank you, Clerk Sherbeck. Okay, item number 9 on the agenda this afternoon is to consent to sever application number B14 2021, Daniel and Beverly Cudney and Paul Wong, 304-599 South Line Road, Lot 48-49, Concession 2 SDR, Township of Glen Elg. Item 9.1, application number B14 2021, Daniel and Beverly Cudney and Paul Wong. 9.2 under the agenda is Planner Spencer's report. Planner Spencer, if you can please read your recommendation If you follow that up with 9.3, written comments received, including 9.3.1, 9.3.2, 9.3.3, as well as 9.3.4. Planner Spencer, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Recommendation is that Committee of Adjustment receive Planner L. Spencer's report, where an approval of application B14 2021 is recommended, subject to the following conditions: the payment of any outstanding municipal taxes on the subject lands, if any, payment of the parkland dedication fee for the newly created parcel, and that revised site plan be provided to the satisfaction of the municipality and conservation authority, demonstrating that development can occur outside of the natural environment zone. The purpose of this application is to sever one 20-hectare rural lot and retain one 20-hectare rural lot, the effect of which will create two rural lots along the original Crown Survey. In order to assess the merits of the application, planning staff reviewed the provincial policy statement, the county official plan, and the municipality's comprehensive zoning bylaw. Planning staff found that the application met the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. Comments were of the official plan and zoning bylaw, in accordance also with the PPS. Comments provided by the Conservation Authority did indicate that they wanted to assess that potential development on the lot of the NE is outside of the NE zone, which requires the revised site plan. Provided an accurate site plan is provided, staff are satisfied generally that the location of the structure can be accommodated on a lot. Comments were provided in addition to the County of Grey Planning and Development Department, who stated they have no concerns with the application. The Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, as previously stated, would like confirmation that the development on the property will be located outside of the identified hazard lands and natural environment zones. Comments of a more of a notice nature were provided by Enbridge Gas and Hydro One, just notifying the applicant that in future they may need to contact them for future information should they need to obtain those services or alter the services in any way. They must be required to contact them. Provided that provisional consent is granted, subject to those conditions, planning staff have no further concerns. As always, clarity can be provided as requested. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Spencer. Move to 9.4, verbal comments. 9.4.1, this is a committee member comments part. If there's any comments or questions at this time from the committee members? And I do see Member Hutchinson and followed by Member Townsend. So Member Hutchinson, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so just to clarify, so we are asking for a site plan on the property where the potential new build is to take place?
And through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct.
Okay, yeah, because I just noticed under the Conservation Authority, they do talk about the proposed setback distances in the site plan do not line up. So yeah, so I guess it's a good idea to have that site plan to make sure that things are in order. Okay, thank you.
Anything further, Member Hutchinson?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Member Townsend, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The actual sketch that was in our package, or at least my version of the package, was unreadable. So I wasn't able to ascertain from that any information, and I just wanted to point that out for future scanning, just to make sure that it works fine. And the other thing is, I'm wondering if that sketch could be sent separately, just so that my file is complete. Thank you.
Planner Spencer, is there any way that we could share a screen now, or do you want to, is that possible?
If you look within the agenda documents, you can actually see the definition of the severance itself through the aerial photography. It is along the original municipal survey. So we can provide a separate email showing the documentation for the file, but that aerial photography does demonstrate the original lot lines for reference purposes.
I appreciate that, which is why I didn't sort of hold up or have any other questions. I just wanted to complete the file and just make sure in the future that those do in fact get addressed.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I do apologize. I did not notice that that had occurred, so I apologize for the inconvenience. Thank you.
That's fine, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further, Member Townsend? Okay, your hand's still up. Any other comments or questions from the committee members before we turn the application to the public? Okay, seeing none, that will move us to item 9.4.2, public comments. Again, two parts to this part of the meeting. First, we're going to be looking for anyone who'd like to speak in favor of the application, and once we're done that, we would look at anybody who'd like to speak that's opposed or against the application. Once again, I'm going to call on Director Mighton to explain to the public how they can participate and to also let us know if we have received any correspondence or have anybody who'd like to speak in favor or opposed. Director Mighton, please.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, for any members of the public who have just joined us, you can participate in one of two ways. If you have joined us over the phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand, and we will unmute you at the chair's request. You can also press *9 again to lower your hand. If you have joined us using the online meeting software and wish to ask a question or express a comment, please send a chat message to myself, Carrie Mighton, and we can unmute you at the chair's request. Or alternatively, I can read the comment on your behalf. Just check my chat function, and I do not have any comments at this point. And I do not have any members with their hand raised at this point, Chair.
Thank you, Director Mighton, and I do not see any raised hands on my screen as well. That will take us to 9.5 on the agenda, and that's the decision by the committee. And I'll be looking to see what direction the committee would like to take with this application, and I do see Member Robinson's hand up first, followed by Member Hutchinson. Member Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The motion that I'm putting forward is that the Committee of Adjustment approves minor variance number B14-2021, Daniel and Beverly Cudney and Paul Wong, for the reasons set out in the planner's report and subject to the conditions set out in the planner's report, payment of any outstanding municipal taxes on subject lands, if any, payment of parkland dedication fee for the newly created parcel, and that a revised site plan is provided to the satisfaction of the municipality and the Conservation Authority, demonstrating that development can occur outside the natural environment zone. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Robinson. And Member Hutchinson, were you going to second that recommendation?
Yeah, Member Hutchison, I second that recommendation.
Thank you. Did you have a comment or a question, Member Herder?
I do have a comment, a point of order, that it's not a minor variance, that it is a severance application, B19-2021. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Member Robinson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Yes, that is exactly it. It was a consent to sever, so that will be reflected in the motion to that point. Thank you very much.
Okay, and just go over to Member Hutchinson just as a seconder. Okay, thank you. All right, and if I could get Clerk Sharbeck to please read the recommendation for us, and then we'll be looking for comments or questions. Clerk Sharbeck, please.
Thank you, Chair Hutchinson. Moved by Member Robinson and seconded by Member Doug Hutchinson, that the Committee of Adjustment hereby approves consent to sever application B14-2021 for Daniel and Beverly Cudney and Paul Wong for the reasons and subject to the conditions as set out in the planner's report.
Thank you. Comments or questions from the committee members on the recommendation? Member Herder, go ahead, please.
Yes, just for added clarity, I have this being severance file B14. I believe the clerk just said B20.
Through you, Chair, I mentioned consent to sever application B14-2021.
Okay, thank you.
I do have 14 written down, so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think that's what I heard too, but anyways, we will call the vote. All members that are in favor, if you could raise your hand. I see all members of the committee are in favor, none opposed. This motion has carried. And we'll go to item 9.6. Clerk Sharbeck, what would be the next steps, please?
Here, Chair Hutchinson, the next step for the applicants, there is a 20-day appeal period for this decision. after which the applicants have 12 months from the date of the decision to complete all of the conditions set out in the decision sheet.
Thank you. Okay, so item number 10 on our agenda, and this is the consent to sever application B19-2021, Merle and Florence Brubaker. Item 10.1, I apologize, Brubaker, 278 and 280 Garifraxer Street South, Durham, Part Lot 2, WGR, Queen, E/S, Plan 500, Town of Durham. 10.1, application number B19-2021, Merle and Florence Brubaker. 10.2, which is Planner Spencer's report. Planner Spencer, will you please read the recommendation as well as include in your comments under 10.3 the written comments received, 10.3.1, 10.3.2, 10.3.3, as well as 10.3.4. Planner Spencer, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. The recommendation is that committee receive report B19-2021, Brubaker Merrill and Brubaker Florence, and the recommendation that application B19-2021 be provisionally approved subject to the following conditions: payment of any outstanding municipal taxes, if applicable, the payment of the $500 parkland dedication fee, payment of the zoning bylaw amendment application fee, and passage of a zoning bylaw amendment application. The lands are municipally identified as 278 and 280 Garifraxer Street South in Durham. The purpose of this application is to sever a semi-detached dwelling unit and the associated property for each unit, the effect of which will create 2 residential parcels. The retained parcel will be approximately 0.08 hectares in size, and the severed parcel will be approximately 0.06 hectares in size. Both properties are on municipal services and contain access to Garifraxer Street South. The proposed lot creation does maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan, as the land use will not change at this time. The provincial policy statement has been reviewed, and based on the fact that the property is located within a defined primary settlement area, planning staff are satisfied that the continued residential use on the property is consistent with the 2020 PPS. In addition, the County of Grey official plan is applicable only in the sense that it defines the primary settlement area. Again, the application maintains that intent and purpose of the county official plan. The property is designated under the West Grey official plan as a downtown transition area. The policy of this plan is to reinforce the importance of the downtown by establishing a transition area between the downtown commercial core and highway commercial area. No changes in land use are proposed as part of this lot creation, and planning staff are satisfied that the intent and purpose of the municipal official plan is maintained. And finally, the subject lands are zoned MU1, which is a mixed-use zone, and R1B, low-density residential, under the municipality's zoning bylaw. The portion of the property containing the semi-detached dwelling unit is zoned MU1. The lot size and frontage proposed as part of this application does not conform to the zoning provisions and will require an amendment to recognize those deficiencies. Planning staff do not have any further concerns in this regard. The applicant will be required to confirm prior to the acceptance of a zoning bylaw amendment application if further plans are intended, which may involve additional recognition through the zoning bylaw. Planning staff are satisfied that the proposed content maintains the general intent and purpose of the official plan. Comments were provided through pre-consultation and formal circulation from the County of Grey and the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. No concerns were identified by either party with respect to the application. Comments of notice were provided also by Hydro One and Enbridge Gas, which did not indicate any concerns with the application at this time. Verbal comments were provided through a telephone conversation with a concerned citizen who has some property standards concern associated with the application, not with the application itself. Any clarification requested is happily answered at any time. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Spencer. Once again, a detailed report. That takes us to 10.4 verbal comments, and 10.4.1 is the committee comments, and I do see Member Hutchinson's hand up. So go ahead, Member Hutchinson.
Yeah, so there were some comments made in the report about, not sure of the intent of the application. Right now, it sounds like it's two rental units by the sounds of it. And by accepting this application, then we're severing the building so that potentially it could be sold as two separate units, is my understanding. Is that correct?
Planner Spencer?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. That is correct. At this point in time, there's been no request for a change in land use. But as a precautionary measure, because we have to go through the zoning amendment process, because of the current zoning, requests for any further clarification for future permitted uses on the property would be requested at that time to avoid duplication of process. But no indication by the applicant has been provided to change the land use in general in any way, shape, or form. Thank you.
Okay, and I do note that there has been a fair bit of discussion about this property in terms of the property standards and the garbage that was in front of one of the units. So I'm not sure where that's all going. It looks like it's been cleaned up, but that's something that definitely needs to be improved on going forward in this this property. So thank you.
Thank you. Anything further there, Member Hutchinson? Okay, your hand's still up, and I will go now to Member Townsend. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did notice there was a restricted conveyance on the property, and just wondering if information can be shared on that particular statement and whether it affects the application at all.
Planner Spencer?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. It's an easement for the adjacent lands is the restrictive covenant on the property. It's registered on title at this time, and that will not change as a result of this application. It will remain registered on title.
Thank you. I wondered if that was true, but I thought best to ask them. Thank you.
Any further, Member Townsend? Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions from the committee members before we turn the application to the public? Okay. Seeing none, we're going to move on to 10.4.2, and this is the public comments. Again, there's two parts to this part of the public meeting. One is to speak first in favor of the application, and then that would be followed by anybody to speak opposed or is against the application. I will go to Director Mighton again to ask or to provide the information to the public how they can participate in the meeting and to let us know if we've received any correspondence or we have anybody on standby. Director Mighton, please.
Thank you, Chair. For members of the public just joining us, you can participate in one of two ways. If you've joined us by phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand and we will unmute you at the chair's request. You can also press *9 again to lower your hand. If you have joined us using the online meeting software and wish to ask a question, please send a chat message to myself, Carrie Mighton, and we can unmute you at the chair's request, or I can read the question on your behalf. Just check I do not have anything in the chat function at this point, and I do not see any raised hands from the public.
And I've just checked my screen as well. I do not have an acknowledgement of anyone wanting to speak to it. Okay, so we will move on then to 10.5, and that's the decision by the committee. What direction would the committee like to take with this application? Member Herger, go ahead, please.
Yes, I would move that Committee of Adjustment hereby approve severance application B19-2021, subject to any conditions as set out in the planning report.
Thank you. We'll be looking for a seconder, and Member Townsend, go ahead, please.
Member Townsend, I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Member Townsend. Clerk Sarbeck, could you please read the recommendation?
Sure, through you, Chair. Moved by Member Herger and seconded by Member Townsend, that Committee of Adjustment hereby approves consent to sever application B19-2021, subject to conditions as set out in the planning report.
Thank you, Clerk Sarbeck. Comments or questions from the committee members on the recommendation? Member Robinson, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It does say in the planning report, as well as in the recommendation that's listed on our agenda, be provisionally approved. And I'm wondering if that would be a consideration for both the mover and the seconder, that the word provisionally be put in before the word approved.
If I may intervene, I believe member Herbert put through recommended and then all the conditions from the planner. So I'm not going to speak out of turn, but I will, just for verification, go to the mover on that one.
That's fine. Provisionally approved as set out in the planning report. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. And go to the seconder, please. Thumbs up. Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions from the committee members? Let's call the vote on, now we know where our clarity is, and all those in favor, if you could signify by raising your hands. I see all members of the committee are in favor and none opposed. The motion has carried. That'll take us to item 10.6. Clerk Scharbeck, what would be the next steps, please?
You, Chair. The next steps, again, are to get through that 20-day appeal period on this decision of the committee. And the applicant has 12 months to complete all of the conditions set out in the decision sheet. Thank you.
Thank you, Clerk Scharbeck. Item number 11 on our agenda today. This is the consent to sever number B20 2021 and B21 21. Cobblestone Diversions Inc. and Agent Wilson Ford Surveying and Engineering, 496 Garifraxa Street, Durham, Plan 505, Lot 16, WGR. 11.1, application number B 2021, Cobblestone Diversions Inc. and Agent Wilson Ford Surveying and Engineering Limited. And 11.2, application number B 2021, Cobblestone Diversions Inc. and Agent Wilson Ford Surveying and Engineering Limited. 11.3 is Planner Spencer's report. We're looking for Planner Spencer's recommendation, including in that would be 11.4, the written comments received, including 11.4.1, 11.4.2, and 11.4.3. Planner Spencer, please.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair. The subject lands are located and identified municipally as 496 Garifraxa Street South within the town of Durham. The purpose and effect of both applications are as follows. File B20-2021 is to provide an easement for an existing driveway encroachment on lands directly north of the subject lands, the effect of which will provide legal notice of the easement and rights of access on title. The purpose of the application for B20-2021 is to sever a residential lot which currently contains a 1.5-story unit and retain a residential lot, the effect of which would create a total of 2 residential parcels, including the retained. Planning staff note, for background purposes, a new entrance permit will be required for the newly created parcel. The lands are designated under the official plan as a primary settlement area. Planning staff are satisfied that the proposed lot creation and the creation of an easement are maintaining the general intent and purpose of the official plan at the county level in this regard. Planning staff have no concerns with respect to the establishment of the easement on title, as it would maintain and provide clarity for the existing easement where construction and establishment of structures would not be permitted in future. To assess the merits of the application, planning staff reviewed the provincial policy statement. And again, planning staff are satisfied that the application is consistent with the 2020 PPS, which directs development of this nature to identified primary settlement areas. Again, planning staff are satisfied that the County of Grey official plan is being maintained, which also directs development of this nature to primary settlement areas. The lands are designated under the Municipality of West Grey official plan as highway, commercial, and residential. The proposed lot creation would be contained entirely within the residential designation, with the retained lands containing the highway commercial component. Planning staff are satisfied that the policies of the local official plan continue to be maintained at this time. In review of the Municipality of West Grey zoning bylaw, there were deficiencies identified as a result of the proposed lot creation. As a result of these deficiencies for the retained parcel, a zoning bylaw amendment will be required to recognize those deficiencies to be in conformance with the zoning bylaw. Staff are satisfied that the consent maintains the general purpose overall of the zoning bylaw. Comments were provided from the County of Grey Planning and Development Department, in addition to the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, and notice was provided by Hydro One and Enbridge Gas. No items of concern were identified by the county or the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. No verbal or written comments for or against the application were received based on the application itself from the public. Provided the provisional consent of these applications with the conditions as noted as required, planning staff have no further concerns with this application. As always, clarity provided at your request. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Spencer. So we'll be on 11.5 on our agenda. That's verbal comments. 11.5.1, and this is the committee members' comments, and I'll be looking to, this is your opportunity to ask any questions, probably any comments you would have on this application. Do we have any comments or questions? And I do see Member Townsend. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure I heard a response to the county's suggestion of potentially an MTO consultation for traffic and volume and safety. So I wonder if Planner Spencer could comment on that, please.
Planner Spencer.
Excuse me. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. With respect to the consultation required with the Ministry of Transportation, any development required within certain proximity to that roadway does require a permit from the MTO regardless. So further consultation at this time, in my professional opinion, is not warranted or required as an extra step. It will be required at a time any building permit or alteration to the existing dwelling unit is undertaken.
Okay, thank you. So it will be done in the future, is I think what I heard you say when they come forward for the zoning, et cetera, or permit.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. So at this point in time, there isn't a necessity to make that a condition of consent. If that was the case, it would be 12 months with which they would have to either obtain a building permit or obtain a permit from MTO, which may or may not align with those timelines, which would effectively, if they couldn't have a consultation with MTO and a permit issued by them, the severance unfortunately would lapse, which will require this process to be conducted a second time.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate the explanation.
Any other questions, Member Townsend?
No.
Okay, thank you. Member Hergert, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I do have a question. I think it's just a clarification on the application. On page 164, it states the date in which the lands were acquired. And I know we're current, but this seems to be November 20th of 2021. I believe it's just a typo. It probably was acquired last fall as it was for sale last summer. I also, to the application, am curious regarding the map and the easement. There's been a survey done. I can see that in the detail of the map. But I'm curious, what would be the benefit of having an easement on that triangular portion in the northeast corner instead of potentially a transfer of land? What would be the benefit to retaining that and putting an easement?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. The benefit of the easement does permit that the property still retains the ownership of the current property that easement is taken upon. To give that corner of the property away, essentially to give it to the next landowner, it doesn't restrict the ability for someone to construct, which potentially would be like an easement, you cannot put a structure or a physical barrier of any kind. If you had a consent and the lands were simply a lot addition, nothing would preclude them from building a small structure, whether, they may have to go through a minor variance to do so, but it provides the guarantee that easement is there in perpetuity, and then no one can block ingress and egress from the property at any point in time.
And who maintains that? Is that maintained by both the dominant and the servient landowners, both?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct.
Okay. Very good. That concludes my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Herger. Any other comments or questions from the committee members before I turn the application to the public? Seeing none, I see your hand still up there, Member Herger. Okay, that's fine. Just wanted to make sure I didn't overlook you. All right, we're gonna go to 11.5.2, it's the public comments. Again, there's two parts to this portion of the meeting. You can speak in favor of the application, and once we've completed that, anybody who'd like to speak opposed or is against the application, once again, Director Mighton will explain to the public how they can participate, and if you could let us know if you received any correspondence or have anybody in the queue that would like to speak in favor or in opposition. Director Mighton, please.
Thank you, Chair. For any members of the public just joining us, you can participate in one of two ways. If you have joined us over the phone, you can press *9 and raise your hand, and we will unmute you at the chair's request, and you can press *9 again to lower your hand. If you have joined us using the online meeting software, you can send a chat message to myself, Carrie Mighton, and we can unmute you at the chair's request, or I can read the question on your behalf. I do have, looks like there is a raised hand from a Cameron.
Yes. Hi, Cameron. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. If you could please state your full name for the record, and are you speaking in favor or opposition of the application? Go ahead, please.
Yes, hello, it's Cameron Gerber, and I'm actually one of the owners of Cobblestone Diversions.
Sorry, Cameron, your audio is very, I can't quite, you can speak maybe a little closer to the mic. I apologize, I could not hear you. If you could start over again, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Sorry, can you hear me better now? Okay, perfect. So yes, I'm Cameron Gerber and one of the owners of Cobblestone Diversions, and just wanted to thank each of you as the owners of Pebbles Restaurant and now Cobblestone. We've always really enjoyed working with West Grey, and just wanted to thank each of you.
Well, thank you very much. Do you have any other comments or statements you'd like to make at this time? Okay, thank you. All right, go back to Director Mighton. Is there any other members of the public that wish to speak to this item?
I have not received anything in the chat for this item, and I do not have any other hands raised from the public.
Thank you very much. We will move on to 11.6, and that's the decision of the committee. What direction would the committee like to take with this application? And I do see Member Hutchinson's hand up. Member Hutchinson, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'd like to move that we move to accept consent to sever number B20 2021 and B21 2021, if we can do them both together, I guess. Cobblestone Diversions Inc. and Agent Wilson Ford Surveying and Engineering Limited.
Thank you. So I do have a mover. I'll be looking for a seconder. And Member Townsend, go ahead, please.
Member Townsend, I second that motion.
Thank you very much. Clerk, do you have a comment or question before I just get the recommendation read by the clerk, Member Herder, or do you want to wait till we? Okay. So Clerk Scharbeck, if you could read the recommendation, and then we'll follow up with comments or questions from the committee members. Clerk Scharbeck, please.
Through you, Chair Hutchinson. Just to note, Member Hutchinson had asked if he could do them both at the same time, and the committee is certainly able to approve them both in the same resolution. What will happen is there will be two separate decision sheets signed, but the application to approve them both is certainly fine together. So the recommendation is that Committee of Adjustment hereby approves both consent to sever application 20-2021 and application 21-2021, subject to the conditions as set out in the planner's report.
Thank you for the follow-up on that as well, Clerk Scharbeck. Okay, now I'll be taking comments or questions on the recommendation before us. And Member Herder, you can go ahead, please.
Thank you. I only have one question about the park, the driveway. Will that be accessed off of Park Street West?
Planner Spencer?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. At this point in time, that is the intent. However, if there is a more acceptable location, it is also possible that additional accesses could be reviewed, but that would be part of the entrance permit process, which will be conducted as a condition of provisional consent should committee approve the application.
And may I just continue on that same discussion? As an entrance permit, that's when the MTO would need to be consulted because it is in that close proximity to Highway 6?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. So that would be part of the process that they would need to be involved in. But the entrance permit itself would come from West Gray on Park
Absolutely.
Street.
Sure. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. So we do have a recommendation before us, and it's moved by member Doug Hutchinson, followed by member Townsend. And is there any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, if you could raise your hand, please. I see all members of the committee are in favor, none opposed. This motion is carried. And that'll take us to item number 11.7. Clerk Scharbeck, what would be the next steps, please?
Through you, Chair, the next steps, again, it's a 20-day appeal period, and the applicants have 12 months to complete all of the conditions that will be set out in the decision sheets.
Thank you, Clerk Scharbeck. Moving along to item number 12 on our agenda, next meeting. I have that down as, that would be Monday, September 13th, 2021. I believe it's our standing 1 o'clock time. Clerk Scharbeck, can you confirm that, please?
Through you, Chair, yes, I have September 13th at 1 p.m. for our next meeting as well.
Okay, thank you. Item number 13, and that will be adjournment. I'll be looking for a motion to adjourn. Please get a mover. Member Robinson, would you be moving that?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Member Robinson. And I do see Member Herger, you're seconding that motion?
Yes, I am. And I have one quick comment.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much to staff. This was a tremendous agenda, full jam-packed with excitement, and you did a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. We recognized them a few weeks ago as well. So the agendas are certainly, they're coming in and all the information's here. It makes our job a lot easier. Clerk Scharbeck, could you read the recommendation before us, please?
Yes. Through you, Chair, the recommendation is that Committee of Adjustment does now adjourn at 2:31 p.m.
Call the motion. All those in favor, if you could raise your hand, please. And I do see all members of the committee are in favor of that, none opposed. Motion carried, and we are adjourned. And just a quick follow-up, stay connected, subscribe today, and receive news and notices from our website, www.westgray.com/subscribe. And you can follow us on Twitter as well, at Facebook, @OurWestGray. Thank you very much. Everyone have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll see you later in the week.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.